The battle lasted exactly 14 minutes. Shipmaster Kolvex watched from his command chair as the last of his escort ships went dark. The human vessels had appeared from nowhere, rising from the shadow of a gas giant like predators waking from sleep. His strike force of 12 ships had been reduced to 3 in the time it took to finish a meal. "Shipmaster, our weapons are offline," his second officer reported. The young Vreth scales had gone pale with fear. "Engine power at 12%. We cannot run." Kolvex gripped the arms of his chair with all 4 hands. Outside the viewport, human ships moved into position around his crippled vessel. They were ugly things, blocky and practical, without the elegant curves of Vreth design. But they were terribly, terribly effective. "Signal our surrender," Kolvex said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. His communications officer hesitated. "Shipmaster, the humans, the stories say they do not." "I know what the stories say." Kolvex stood, straightening his uniform. "But we are soldiers of the Vreth Dominion. We will face our fate with dignity. Send the signal." The surrender beacon activated. Its pulse went out into the void, carrying the universal message that every spacefaring species understood. "We yield. We submit. Take us as your prisoners according to the laws of civilized war." For a long moment, nothing happened. The human ships held their positions, weapons still trained on the Vreth vessels. Kolvex felt his hearts beating in his chest, all 3 of them pounding against his ribs. Then the lead human ship moved forward. It was larger than the others, its hull marked with symbols that Kolvex could not read. A docking tube extended from its side like a reaching arm. "They are boarding us," his second officer whispered. Kolvex nodded. This was expected. This was how it worked. The victors would come aboard, secure the crew, and transport them to holding facilities. They would spend months or years in captivity, but they would live. The concordat of civilized warfare guaranteed it. He wondered what human prison food tasted like. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Kolvex had positioned himself at the front of his assembled crew, ready to formally offer his surrender to whatever human officer came through that door. The human who entered was smaller than he expected. Vreth stood nearly 3 meters tall, and Kolvex had somehow imagined humans as giants. But this one barely reached his chest. She wore simple gray armor and carried a weapon that looked too large for her frame. More humans followed, a dozen of them, moving with quiet efficiency. They spread through the corridor, checking corners, securing positions. Professional, controlled. The lead human stopped in front of Kolvex. She looked up at him without fear. "I am Shipmaster Kolvex, of the Vreth Dominion," he said, using the trade language that most species understood. "I offer the surrender of myself and my crew according to the terms of the Concordat. We submit ourselves as your prisoners." The human studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. "Understood. Your crew will come with us. Leave your weapons here." Kolvex felt a small measure of relief. At least they were following protocol. He gave the order, and his crew began laying down their sidearms in a growing pile on the deck. What followed was strange. The humans moved through his ship with obvious purpose. They checked every compartment, gathered every crew member, and escorted them all to the docking tube. But they did not bind anyone's hands. They did not separate officers from enlisted. They simply moved them along, like herders guiding animals. Kolvex found himself walking through the human ship's corridors. The walls were plain gray metal, covered with writing he could not understand. The air smelled different than Vreth ships, cleaner, somehow, sharper. They passed through several sections before reaching a large cargo bay. His crew was already there, standing in confused clusters. The humans had given them water and simple food packs. Some of his youngest crew members were eating, their fear temporarily forgotten. A new human approached. This one was older, with gray in his short hair and lines around his eyes. He wore a different uniform than the soldiers, simpler and without armor. "Shipmaster Kolvex," the human said. "I am Captain Rodriguez of the vessel Persistent. I have questions about your mission in this sector." Kolvex straightened. "I will answer what I can under the terms of the Concordat. Name, rank, and unit identification. Nothing more." The human made a strange sound. It took Kolvex a moment to realize it was laughter. "That's fine," Captain Rodriguez said. "We already know why you're here. You hit our convoy 6 hours ago, killed 43 merchant sailors, destroyed 2 cargo ships. Kolvex said nothing. This was true. We're not going to interrogate you, the human continued. We're not going to torture you. We're not going to lock you in cells for the next 20 years. Something cold moved through Kolvex's chest. Then, what will you do with us? Captain Rodriguez checked a device on his wrist. There's a habitable moon about 2 days from here. Good atmosphere, fresh water, native plant life that our scans say your species can eat. We're going to drop you there with enough supplies to last until your people come to pick you up. Kolvex stared at the human. He could not have heard correctly. You are releasing us? That's right, but we are your prisoners. The Concordat gives you the right to hold us, to use us as leverage in negotiations, to exchange us for your own captured soldiers. Captain Rodriguez's expression changed. The smile disappeared, replaced by something harder. We don't take prisoners, shipmaster. I do not understand. No, the human said quietly. I don't suppose you do. 2 days later, Kolvex stood on the surface of a moon he did not know, watching the human ships climb back into the sky. Around him, his crew made camp with the supplies they had been given. Shelters, water purifiers, emergency beacons. Everything they needed to survive until rescue came. He had tried to understand. During the journey, he had asked questions of every human who would speak with him. Why were they doing this? What was the purpose? The answers he received made no sense. Keeping prisoners is cruel, one human soldier had told him. Locking someone in a cage for years, away from their family, their culture, everything they know, that's torture. We won't do it. But this is how war works, Kolvex had argued. Prisoners are taken. They are held until the conflict ends. Then they are returned home. The soldier had looked at him with something like pity. How long does a war last, shipmaster? 10 years? 50? 100? And you keep people locked up that whole time, waiting for a peace that might never come? Kolvex had not answered. He could not. Now, standing on alien soil, he felt something he did not expect. Not relief at his survival, not gratitude for human mercy. He felt insulted. The humans had looked at him, at his crew, at everything the Vreth Dominion represented, and they had decided that keeping them was not worth the trouble. They were not valuable enough to imprison, not dangerous enough to execute. They were simply released, like animals caught in a trap and then set free, because they were too small to bother with. His communications officer approached. Shipmaster, I have activated the emergency beacon. Our fleet will detect the signal within hours. Kolvex nodded slowly. Good. When rescue arrives, I want a full report prepared. Every detail of our capture and release. The High Command must know what happened here. Do you think they will care that we were released? They will care about the insult. Kolvex turned to look at his officer. The humans have told the galaxy that Vreth prisoners are worthless, that we are not worth keeping. The Dominion cannot allow this to stand. The rescue fleet arrived 3 days later. A light cruiser and 2 escorts, dispatched as soon as the beacon was detected. Kolvex and his crew were brought aboard and treated as heroes. The story of their survival spread quickly, but the reaction from High Command was not what Kolvex expected. He stood before the Council of Admirals in the Great Hall on Vreth Prime. The chamber was ancient, its walls carved with the victories of 1,000 years. 7 admirals sat in judgment, their scales dark with age and authority. Let me understand this correctly, Admiral Thesic said. He was the oldest of them, his 4 eyes clouded with years, but his mind still sharp. The humans captured your ships, boarded your vessels, had your entire crew at their mercy, and then simply let you go? Yes, Admiral. Without demands? Without negotiation? Without any attempt to use you as leverage? They said they do not take prisoners. Silence filled the chamber. The admirals looked at each other, and Kolvex saw something pass between them, something that looked like outrage. This is not mercy, Admiral Thesic said finally. This is contempt. The humans are telling us that Vreth lives have no value, that we are beneath their notice. Another admiral spoke. The Concordat of civilized warfare exists for a reason. It protects all species equally. If the humans refuse to follow its rules, they set themselves above the rest of the galaxy. They must be taught, Admiral Thesic said. His voice was cold now, like metal in winter. They must learn to take prisoners as all civilized species do. And if they will not learn, he paused, letting the silence stretch. Then we will make them. Kolvex felt something twist in his stomach. He had wanted the Dominion to respond to his humiliation. He had wanted them to understand the insult, but the look in Admiral Thesic's eyes promised something more than a simple response. It promised war. I am authorizing the formation of a grand fleet, Thesic announced. The largest military force assembled in 3 centuries. We will show the humans what it means to dismiss the Vrith Dominion. As Kolvex left the chamber, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He had told the truth. He had delivered his report. But he had not told them everything. He had not told them about the look in Captain Rodriguez's eyes when he said they did not take prisoners. That look had not been contempt. It had been something else entirely, something that looked very much like sorrow. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin had not slept in 36 hours. She stood at the observation window of New Geneva Station, watching the stars turn slowly past. The station sat at the edge of human space, a massive wheel of metal and light that served as the headquarters for the Colonial Defense Fleet. Beyond the window, patrol ships moved in careful patterns, always watching, always waiting. Admiral, your visitor has arrived. Chen turned from the window. Her aide stood in the doorway, looking nervous. That was understandable. The visitor had come a very long way, and the news she brought was not good. Send her in. The visitor was a Cathari, one of the tall, feathered species that served as diplomats for the Galactic Concordat. Her plumage was bright blue and gold, the colors of her office, and she moved with the careful grace of someone who spent their life navigating between cultures. Admiral Chen, the Cathari said, bowing slightly. I am Ambassador Cyril. I come on behalf of the Concordat Council. I know why you're here. Chen gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Would you like something to drink? No, thank you. Ambassador Cyril settled into the chair, folding her wings against her back. I will be direct, Admiral. The Concordat has received a formal complaint from the Vreth Dominion regarding human military practices. Our refusal to take prisoners. Yes. The ambassador's feathers ruffled slightly. The Vreth claim that your policy violates the fundamental principles of civilized warfare. They say that releasing captured combatants without proper processing is an insult to their dignity and status as a sovereign species. Chen almost laughed. Almost. Ambassador, I'm going to tell you something that few beings outside humanity know. Will you hear me out? Cyril tilted her head. I will listen. Chen walked to her desk and activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them. Ships, stations, and faces. Thousands of faces. 80 years ago, humanity fought a war with the Talari regime. They attacked our colonies in the Outer Reach, and we responded. The war lasted 11 years. During that time, we followed every rule of the Concordat. We took prisoners. The images shifted. Now they showed facilities. Long corridors of metal cells, processing centers, recreation yards surrounded by fences. We built camps to hold them. 53 camps across 12 worlds. At the peak of the war, we held over 200,000 Talari prisoners. Ambassador Cyril watched the images with professional calm. This is standard practice. The Concordat requires humane treatment of prisoners, which you clearly provided. Humane by whose definition? Chen's voice was quiet. The Telari are hive-minded, Ambassador. They exist as part of a collective consciousness. Each individual is connected to thousands of others through biological quantum fields. When we separated them from their hive, we didn't just imprison them. We amputated their souls. The images changed again. Chen had hoped she would never have to show these to anyone. Medical reports, psychological evaluations, and the recordings. A Talari prisoner sat in a bare cell, rocking back and forth. Its mouth moved constantly, speaking words to people who could not hear. Its eyes were empty, staring at nothing. After a few seconds, it began to scream. They went mad, Chen said. Not all at once. It took months, sometimes years. But eventually, every single one of them broke. The silence in their heads drove them insane. Surely you could have, what? Let them communicate with their hive? They were prisoners of war. Their hive was our enemy. Any communication could have been used to transmit military intelligence. We couldn't allow it. Chen paused the recording. The frozen image of the screaming Telari hung in the air. We tried everything. We grouped them together so they could form small local networks. It helped a little, but not enough. 100 Telari cannot replace 1,000,000. We gave them medication, therapy, activities to fill their time. Nothing worked. They kept dying. Suicide, self-harm, or simply stopping, lying down and refusing to continue living. Ambassador Cyril's feathers had gone flat against her body. I was not aware of this. No one is. It's not something humanity is proud of. Chen turned off the display. By the end of the war, we had lost more than 60,000 Telari prisoners, not to escape attempts or illness, to the simple cruelty of keeping them alive in conditions that their biology could not survive. The war ended. You returned them to their people. We tried. Chen sat down heavily in her chair. The survivors were damaged beyond repair. Their own hive couldn't integrate them back. They were like holes in a fabric, wrong shapes that didn't fit anymore. Most of them were euthanized within months of returning home. The Telari considered it a mercy. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was tired. After that war, humanity made a decision. We would never take prisoners again. Not because we wanted to be cruel, because taking prisoners was the cruelest thing we could do. Ambassador Cyril processed this for a long moment. But not all species are like the Telari. The Vreth are individuals. They do not share consciousness. No. But they live for 300 years. Their family bonds are sacred. A Vreth separated from their clan for decades suffers in ways we can barely understand. And then there are the Mind-Sworn, who consider captivity worse than death, and the crystalline, who slowly lose their sentience when removed from their homeworld's radiation. Every species has something that makes imprisonment a unique form of torture, so instead you simply release them, or kill them quickly in battle, one or the other. No cages, no camps, no watching beings slowly lose themselves over years of captivity. Chen leaned forward. Ambassador, the Concordat was written by species who never thought about what imprisonment really means. You made rules that feel civilized to you, but those rules cause suffering you never imagined. Cyril was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. The Vreth do not see it that way. They see your policy as an insult, an attack on their honor. I know. They are massing a fleet, the largest in 3 centuries. They intend to force you to change your practices. I know that too. Chen stood and walked back to the observation window. We've been tracking their movements for weeks. They'll be ready to move within a month. And what will you do? Chen did not answer immediately. She watched the stars, thinking about the Telari, about the screaming prisoner in the recording, about all the faces in those camps, slowly fading into madness and death. We'll do what we always do, she said finally. We'll fight. And when we win, we'll release their soldiers and send them home. And maybe, eventually, they'll understand why. Ambassador Cyril rose to leave. At the door, she paused. Admiral, I must tell you something. Off the record. Chen turned. Go ahead. I have read the Concordat's founding documents. All of them, including the early drafts that were never published. Do you know why the prisoner provisions were included? I assumed it was basic decency. Partly. But also economics. Prisoners have value. They can be exchanged, ransomed, used as leverage in negotiations. The species that founded the Concordat wanted to ensure that war remained profitable, that there were always assets to bargain with. Cyril's feathers shifted color, showing something that might have been shame. Your policy terrifies them, Admiral. Not because it's cruel, because it removes the economic incentive for war. If you can't gain prisoners, conflict becomes pure loss. Chen absorbed this. So, we're threatening their business model, in a sense. The ambassador moved toward the door. I don't know if that helps you, but I thought you should understand what you're really fighting against. After she left, Chen stood alone in her office for a long time. Her aide eventually returned with a datapad full of reports. Fleet movements, supply lines, intelligence estimates on Vreth capabilities. Admiral, the analysis division has completed their projections. The Vreth fleet will outnumber us roughly 3-1. Chen took the datapad. What do they recommend? Strategic withdrawal from the border systems. Consolidate our forces for a decisive engagement. And leave our colonies exposed? The aide hesitated. It would be temporary, Admiral. The civilian populations could be evacuated. Chen thought about the families in those colonies, the children who had never known war, the farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who had built lives on the edge of known space. No, she said. We don't abandon our people. Send word to all sector commanders. I want defensive positions reinforced within 2 weeks. And activate the quiet hands. Her aide's expression changed. Admiral, are you sure? That program is… I know what it is. Chen's voice was hard now. If the Vreth want a war, we'll give them one. But we'll fight it our way. And when it's over, we'll send their soldiers home to tell their families what happened. She turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, a fleet was gathering. A fleet full of soldiers who expected to fight a civilized war. To take prisoners. To follow rules that made sense to them. They had no idea what they were walking into. Admiral, her aide said quietly. What if they take our people prisoner? What if they use our own civilians as leverage? Chen closed her eyes. This was the question that had kept her awake for 36 hours. The question that had no good answer. Then we'll have to show them something they've never seen before, she said. Patience. The aide didn't understand. That was fine. He would. They all would. Eventually, the Vreth thought humans were barbarians who refused to follow civilized rules. They were about to learn that humanity's rules were built on something far older than civilization. They were built on memory. On the faces of 60,000 Telleri who died in human camps. On the screams of beings who would have preferred a quick death to the slow cruelty of captivity. Humanity would never forget those faces. And they would never, ever, build another cage. The Vreth Grand Fleet entered human space on the morning of the 3rd day of the harvest month. Admiral Thesic stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the stars shift from blue to normal as his ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around him, 200 warships spread across the void like a wave of dark metal. All vessels report successful transition, his flag captain announced. The human border stations are detecting us now. Thesic allowed himself a small smile. Let them detect. Let them see what was coming. The humans had insulted the Dominion by refusing to take prisoners. Now they would learn what that insult cost. Signal the fleet. Begin the advance. The Kepler frontier consisted of 3 star systems on the edge of human territory. They were not military targets. They were colony worlds, home to farmers and miners and the ordinary people who built civilization on new worlds. The Vreth had chosen them carefully. You did not force an enemy to change their ways by destroying their soldiers. You forced them by taking what they valued most. The first system fell in 6 hours. The human defense forces were brave but hopelessly outnumbered. They fought hard, but in the end, mathematics won over courage. The orbital station surrendered when its shields failed and its weapons went dark. Thesic did not destroy it. He boarded it instead. The humans on the station were gathered in the main cargo bay, surrounded by Vreth soldiers. They looked up at Thesic with expressions he could not quite read. Fear, certainly, but something else as well. Something that looked almost like defiance. I am Admiral Thesic of the Vreth Dominion, he announced. His voice echoed through the bay, translated by the device's all-species war. You are now prisoners of war. You will be treated according to the terms of the Concordat of Civilized Warfare. You will not be harmed if you cooperate. A human stepped forward. She was older, with gray hair and a face marked by years of hard work. The station commander, Thesic guessed. And if we don't cooperate? She asked. Thesic looked down at her. Humans were so small. It was strange that they had built such a large territory, spread across so many worlds. Then you will be harmed, he said simply. But I would prefer to avoid that. We are not savages, Commander. We follow the rules of civilized species. The woman's expression changed. For a moment, Thesic thought she might laugh. Civilized, she repeated. Right. Thesic did not understand her tone, but he did not care. The first phase was complete. He had prisoners, thousands of them. The second and third systems fell just as quickly. By the end of the week, the Vreth controlled the entire Kepler frontier. 40,000 human civilians were in their custody. Orbital stations, colony domes, mining platforms, all of it belonged to the Dominion now. And still the human fleet did not come. Thesic had expected a response. A counterattack. Something. The humans were known for their aggressive tactics, their willingness to fight against any odds. But the space beyond the Kepler frontier remained empty. Silent. Perhaps they are frightened, his flag captain suggested. Perhaps they finally understand that they cannot defeat us. Thesic was not so sure. Something felt wrong. The humans were too quiet. On the 10th day of the occupation, he received a communication from the human colonial defense fleet. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin appeared on his display, her face calm and unreadable. "Admiral Thesic," she said, "I understand you wanted to speak with me. I did not request communication," Thesic replied, "but I am pleased you have reached out. I assume you wish to discuss the return of your citizens. I wish to ask you a question." This was unexpected. Thesic tilted his head. "Ask?" Chen's eyes were steady, dark and deep, like pools of still water. "Do you understand what you're asking us to become?" Thesic did not understand the question. "I am asking you to follow the rules of civilized warfare, to take prisoners as all species do, to acknowledge that Vreeth lives have value. That's not what you're asking." Chen's voice was soft, almost gentle. "You're asking us to build cages, to lock beings away from everything they know and love, to watch them suffer for years, decades, while you use them as bargaining chips in your political games. This is how war works. This is how your war works. Not ours." Thesic felt his scales darken with anger. "You have no choice, Admiral. I hold 40,000 of your people. If you want them back, you will accept our terms. You will take Vreeth prisoners according to Concordat rules. You will acknowledge that your current practices are barbaric." Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. There was something heavy in it now. Something old. "I'm going to give you one chance, Admiral. Release the civilians. Withdraw your fleet. Go home and tell your people that this war was a mistake." Thesic laughed. He could not help it. "You threaten me? You, whose fleet is half the size of mine. You, who have done nothing for 10 days but watch us take your territory. I'm not threatening you. I'm asking you to be wise. And if I refuse?" Chen's expression did not change. "Then you'll learn why humanity doesn't take prisoners. And I don't think you'll like the lesson." The communication ended. Thesic stared at the blank screen for a long moment, trying to understand what had just happened. The human admiral had done nothing, offered nothing, made no demands, proposed no exchanges. She had simply asked him to leave, and then disconnected. It made no sense. "Admiral," his flag captain said carefully, "what do we do now?" "We wait," Thesic decided. "The humans are playing some kind of game. They think they can bluff us into retreat. We will show them that the Dominion does not bluff." Days passed. The occupation continued. Vreeth soldiers patrolled the captured stations and colonies, watching the human prisoners with careful attention. The humans were strange captives. They did not fight. They did not resist. They simply watched back, their small eyes following every Vreeth movement. On the 15th day, something changed. Thesic was reviewing supply reports when his flag captain burst into his office. "Admiral, you need to see this." The display showed a human ship, a small vessel, barely larger than a shuttle. It had appeared at the edge of the system and was broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is the Colonial Defense Vessel Quiet Promise," a voice said. "We are carrying medical supplies for the civilian population of Kepler Station. We request permission to dock." Thesic stared at the display. "One ship? They send one ship?" "It appears so, Admiral. Should we destroy it?" Thesic considered. A medical ship, unarmed, according to their scans. It was clearly a gesture of some kind, though he could not understand what the humans hoped to accomplish. "Let it dock," he decided, "but search it thoroughly. If there are any weapons, any soldiers, anything suspicious, destroy it immediately." The Quiet Promise docked at Kepler Station. Vreeth soldiers searched every compartment, every container, every corner of the small vessel. They found nothing but medical supplies, bandages, medicines, simple equipment that any colony might need. The ship's crew consisted of 3 humans, 2 men and a woman, all wearing simple civilian clothes. They offered no resistance, answered every question, and seemed genuinely confused by the Vreeth suspicion. "We're just doctors," the woman explained. Your soldiers have been occupying this station for 2 weeks. People are getting sick. Children need vaccines. We're here to help. Thesic ordered them, watched constantly. He did not trust this. Something was wrong. But day after day, the medical team did exactly what they claimed. They treated illnesses. They distributed supplies. They asked for nothing in return. More ships arrived over the following days. All small, all unarmed, all carrying supplies or specialists. Engineers to repair broken equipment. Teachers to keep the children occupied. Counselors to help people cope with the stress of occupation. Thesic allowed them all. What else could he do? Destroying medical ships would make the Dominion look like monsters, and these humans were doing nothing hostile. They were simply helping. By the 20th day, there were nearly 100 additional humans on the captured stations. All civilians, all harmless, and still the human fleet did not come. Thesic began to feel something he had not felt in decades of military service. Uncertainty. The humans were doing something. He was sure of it, but he could not see what. Every report showed the same thing. Quiet cooperation. No resistance. No problems. His flag captain noticed his mood. Admiral, perhaps the humans have simply accepted the situation. Perhaps they know they cannot win, and they are trying to minimize the damage. Perhaps. Thesic did not believe it, but he had no evidence to support his suspicion. Only a feeling, deep in his gut, that he was missing something important. On the 21st day, Admiral Chen sent another communication. Hello, Admiral Thesic. I hope you're finding the occupation educational. Her tone had changed. There was something in her voice that sounded almost like amusement. What are you planning? Thesic demanded. What are all these ships? What are your people doing? Chen smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it made Thesic's scales go cold. We're not planning anything, Admiral. We're just waiting. Waiting for what? For you to realize that you've already lost. The communication ended. Thesic immediately ordered a full security review of every captured facility. His soldiers searched every compartment, questioned every human, checked every system. They found nothing. No weapons, no explosives, no communications equipment that could reach the human fleet. Just people, ordinary people, living their ordinary lives under Wraith occupation. But that night, Thesic could not sleep. He stood at the window of his quarters, looking out at the stars, and wondered what the humans were waiting for. Whatever it was, he had a feeling he would not like it when it arrived. The woman called herself Dr. Sarah Chen. She was no relation to the Admiral. She had arrived on the 3rd medical ship, carrying vaccines and antibiotics. For 3 weeks, she had worked in the medical bay of Kepler Station, treating infections and setting broken bones. The Wraith guards watched her constantly, but she never gave them any reason for concern. At night, when the station lights dimmed, she did other work. Package 7 is in position. She whispered into a device no larger than a fingernail. It was hidden beneath the skin of her wrist, invisible to any scanner. Ready for activation on your signal. A voice responded, equally quiet. Confirmed. Package 7 is live. Continue to Package 8. Dr. Chen smiled and returned to her rounds. Across the 3 systems of the Kepler frontier, similar scenes played out. The engineers who had come to repair broken equipment also left small gifts behind. The teachers who kept children occupied also taught them specific songs, games with hidden meanings. The counselors who helped people cope with occupation also passed along instructions, memorized phrases, carefully planned words. The Wraith did not understand what they were seeing. They had expected human resistance to look like violence, explosions, assassinations, armed uprising. Instead, they got doctors and teachers and engineers who did nothing but help. They did not realize that helping was the point. Commander Maria Santos was the highest-ranking human left on Kepler Station. She had been its commander before the invasion, and the Wraith had allowed her to continue in that role. She was useful. She kept the other humans calm and cooperative. What the Wraith did not know was that Commander Santos had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. She had joined the Quiet Hands program as a young officer, fresh out of the academy. The program had been created after the HFY War, when humanity decided that it would never again take prisoners. Someone had asked the obvious question: if we don't take prisoners, what happens when our enemies take us prisoner? The answer was, the Quiet Hands. specialists, trained in patience, in waiting, in surviving captivity, not just with their bodies, but with their purpose intact. Every ship that had arrived in the last 3 weeks carried quiet hands operatives. Not soldiers, not fighters, teachers, doctors, engineers, people who could be useful to an occupying force, people who would be allowed to move freely, interact with the population, and wait. Commander Santos met with Dr. Chen in the medical bay on the 22nd day of the occupation. "How many packages are in place?" she asked quietly. 43 across this station alone. Similar numbers at the other facilities. Dr. Chen checked a data pad, making sure no Vreeth were nearby. "The population is ready. They know what to do when the signal comes." "And the signal?" "Admiral Chen will send it when the time is right. She's waiting for something." Santos nodded. Patience. That was the hardest part. The Vreeth walked around like they owned everything. They ate human food, used human equipment, gave orders to human workers, and the humans smiled and obeyed and waited. "There's something else," Dr. Chen said. "The outside channels have been active. Our people have been reaching out to Vreeth civilians." This was the part of the plan that Santos had not fully understood. How is that possible? The Vreeth control all communications. Not all of them. The quiet hands brought quantum relay points hidden in medical equipment. "We've been broadcasting into Vreeth civilian networks for 2 weeks. Broadcasting what?" Dr. Chen's expression changed. It became heavier, sadder. The truth. About the Teleri War. About what happened to the prisoners. About why humanity doesn't take captives. Santos was quiet for a moment. "And how are they responding?" "Mixed. Some don't believe it. Some don't care. But some..." Dr. Chen paused. "Some are asking questions, demanding answers from their government. The broadcasts include recordings. Commander. Testimonies from the Teleri who survived. From the human guards who watched them die. It's not easy to dismiss. This was humanity's true weapon. Not guns, not ships, not overwhelming force. Information. Memory. The willingness to show the galaxy what they had learned, even when it made them look like monsters. The Vreeth had started this war because they thought humanity was barbaric. Now they were learning that humanity's rules came from a place of terrible experience, from lessons learned in blood and suffering and 60,000 deaths. On the 23rd day, Admiral Thesic made an announcement to all the human prisoners. He appeared on every screen, his 4 eyes staring out at the captive population. "Citizens of the Kepler frontier," he said, "your government has abandoned you. Admiral Chen has refused to negotiate for your release. She does not value your lives." Commander Santos watched the broadcast from the station's central hub. Around her, humans looked up at the screens with expressions that the Vreeth probably thought were despair. Santos knew better. Those expressions were anticipation. "However," Thesic continued, "the Vreeth Dominion is merciful. We offer you a choice. Any human who wishes to cooperate with our administration will be given privileged status. Better food, better quarters, access to communication with family members outside the occupation zone." He paused, letting the offer sink in. "All we ask in return is your help. Information about your military, about your fleet movements, about the location of other human settlements. Help us, and you will be rewarded. Resist, and you will remain ordinary prisoners until the war ends." The broadcast ended. Vreeth soldiers moved through the station, watching for reactions. What they saw was nothing. No one stepped forward to collaborate. No one showed any sign of accepting the offer. The humans simply returned to their work, their expressions unchanged. Admiral Thesic was informed of this within the hour. His response was to increase the pressure. He reduced food rations. He cut power to recreational areas. He announced that prisoners who refused to cooperate would be moved to more restrictive facilities. Still nothing. The humans endured. What Thesic did not understand was that this was exactly what the quiet hands had trained for. Every hardship he imposed only strengthened human resolve. Every threat only reminded them that patience was a weapon. On the 25th day, Dr. Chen approached Commander Santos with urgent news. "The outside channels are exploding. The recordings we broadcast have gone viral in Vreeth civilian networks. There are protests on 2 major Dominion worlds." Santos felt something shift in her chest. It was beginning. What are they protesting? The war, the occupation, The whole concept of taking prisoners. Dr. Chen's eyes were bright. Some of them are calling for Admiral Thesic to be recalled. Others are demanding an investigation into whether the Vreth would treat prisoners any better than the Talari were treated. And how is the Dominion government responding? They're trying to suppress it, but the information is spreading too fast. Every time they shut down one channel, 3 more open up. Commander Santos smiled. This was the human way of war. Not a battle of ships, but a battle of ideas. Not conquest, but education. That night, Admiral Chen sent the signal. It was not an order to fight. It was not a call to arms. It was simply a phrase, broadcast on frequencies only the quiet hands knew to monitor. The weight of keeping. Across the Kepler frontier, humans began to move. Not violently, not suddenly, but with purpose. Engineers who had been repairing broken equipment activated the packages they had planted. These were not bombs. They were something more elegant. Lockouts, overrides, control systems that could be turned on or off with a word. The Vreth soldiers woke up the next morning to discover that nothing worked the way it was supposed to. Doors that should have opened stayed closed. Lights that should have turned on stayed dark. Life support systems that should have run automatically required manual operation. Nothing was broken. Nothing was destroyed. Everything was simply uncooperative. Admiral Thesic demanded explanations. His technicians investigated. They found nothing wrong with the equipment. It simply refused to respond to Vreth commands. It's the humans, one technician reported. The systems are keyed to human biometrics. Only humans can operate them now. Then force the humans to operate them. We tried, Admiral. They won't. They say they don't remember how. The occupation had become a trap. The Vreth controlled the territory, but they could not control the infrastructure. Every system required human cooperation to function, and the humans had stopped cooperating. Thesic tried threats. He tried punishments. He tried everything he could think of. The humans simply endured, patient and silent, waiting for him to understand. On the 28th day, the human fleet arrived. It appeared at the edge of the system without warning, emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 200 ships, not enough to match the Vreth fleet in direct combat, but they did not need to match the fleet. They only needed to hold position. Admiral Chen's face appeared on Thesic's display. Hello, Admiral. I see you've been having some difficulties. Thesic felt his scales flush dark with anger. Your people have sabotaged everything. This is a violation of the laws of war. Is it? We haven't harmed anyone. We haven't destroyed anything. We've simply stopped helping you use our equipment. Chen's voice was calm. That's not sabotage. That's just not cooperating. You think this will save you? I still have 40,000 hostages. You can still what, Admiral? Kill them? Your own civilian population is watching. They're seeing everything that happens here. Do you think they'll support a military that murders helpless prisoners? Thesic was silent. He had not considered this. The protests on Vreth worlds had grown larger every day. If he ordered executions now, in full view of the galaxy, I'm going to give you one chance, Chen said. The same chance I gave you before. Release the civilians. Withdraw your fleet. Go home. And if I refuse, then you'll sit here, in systems you cannot control, with a fleet you cannot supply, while your own people demand your removal. Chen paused. We can wait, Admiral. We've always been good at waiting. Thesic looked around his bridge. His officers were watching him, waiting for orders, but he could see doubt in their eyes now. They had expected an easy victory. They had not expected this. You planned this from the beginning, he said quietly. We planned for every possibility. Chen replied. Humanity has learned that the best prison is the one you build yourself. You came here to force us to take prisoners. Instead, you've become prisoners of your own occupation. The communication ended. Thesic stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by the most powerful fleet in Vreth history, and realized that he had already lost. The battle for the Kepler frontier lasted 4 hours. It was not the battle Admiral Thesic had imagined. There were no great clashes of fleets, no desperate last stands, no glorious charges into enemy fire. Instead, there was chaos. The human fleet did not attack. It simply held position at the edge of the system, waiting. The real fight happened on the ground. On Kepler Station, The uprising began at dawn. It started with the doors. Every airlock, every corridor seal, every emergency bulkhead suddenly responded only to human commands. Vreth soldiers found themselves trapped in compartments, cut off from each other, unable to reach their weapons or their ships. Commander Santos walked through the station like a ghost. The Vreth had thought she was just an administrator, a useful tool to keep the population calm. They had not realized that she had spent 15 years training for exactly this moment. Section 7 is secure. Dr. Chen reported through the hidden communicator. No casualties on either side. Good. Keep it that way. Santos moved toward the command center. Remember, we're not here to kill them. We're here to show them the door. The station's human population moved with coordinated precision. Every person knew their role. The quiet hands had taught them well. Some operated the control systems, guiding Vreth soldiers into holding areas. Others provided medical care to anyone who was injured. Still others simply stood watch, ensuring that nothing went wrong. By midday, Kepler Station was back in human hands. The Vreth garrison had been gathered in the main cargo bay, the same place where they had held human prisoners a month before. Now, the roles were reversed. Admiral Thesic received reports from across the frontier. It was the same everywhere. The human population had risen up, not with weapons, but with control. Systems that had stopped working for Vreth suddenly worked perfectly for humans. Doors opened for humans and closed for Vreth. Life support prioritized human sections. Communication arrays broadcast human messages. The Vreth Grand Fleet still controlled space, but they could not reach the ground. Every shuttle that tried to land was denied docking permission. Every Marine team that tried to breach an airlock found it sealed against them. Admiral, we must withdraw, his flag captain urged. Our supply lines are failing. The civilian population at home is demanding we end this. If we stay here much longer, I know. Thesic's voice was hollow. He had never been defeated like this. Never been so completely outmaneuvered without losing a single ship in combat. He opened a channel to Admiral Chen. You have won, he said simply. What are your terms? Chen appeared on his display. She looked tired, but there was no triumph in her expression. Only the same heaviness he had seen in her eyes at the beginning. Same as before. Take your soldiers. Take your ships. Go home. And our people on the stations? The soldiers who surrendered? They'll be transported to the edge of the system and released. Just like we did with Shipmaster Kolvex a month ago. Thesic felt something twist in his chest. You truly will not keep them? Even after everything they did? Everything I ordered them to do? What would be the point? Chen asked. Revenge, justice. Those are words species use to justify cages. We don't need cages, Admiral. We need you to understand. Understand what? Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different. Softer. Sadder. On my desk, back on New Geneva Station, there's a photograph. It's from the HFY War. It shows a prisoner named Veltrix. She was a teacher before the war. Mathematics. She loved patterns and numbers and the way equations could describe the universe. Thesic did not understand why the human was telling him this. We kept her in a camp for 7 years, Chen continued. 7 years away from her hive. 7 years of silence in her head where millions of voices used to be. By the end, she couldn't remember what numbers were. She couldn't remember her own name. She just sat in her cell and rocked back and forth, trying to hear something, anything, in the void where her people used to be. What happened to her? She died. Not from violence or illness. She just stopped. Her body kept going for a few weeks, but she was already gone. Chen's eyes met Thesic's across the void between their ships. We killed her, Admiral. Not with weapons. With kindness. We fed her and housed her and gave her everything the Concordat required. And we killed her anyway, because we didn't understand that imprisonment itself was the weapon. Thesic was silent. That photograph is why humanity doesn't take prisoners. Not because we're barbaric. Because we've learned what barbarism really looks like. Chen paused. I'm giving you a chance to learn too. Take your people home. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what you saw. They will not believe me. They will say I was defeated, that I failed. Then show them. Chen gestured to someone off-screen. We're transmitting the full archive of the HFY War. All of it. The reports, the recordings, the testimonies, everything we have. Share it with your people. Let them decide for themselves what they think of civilized warfare. The data transfer began. Thesic watched the files accumulate in his system. Thousands of documents, hundreds of recordings. A complete record of humanity's shame, offered freely to an enemy. Why would you give us this? It makes you look like monsters. Because we were monsters, Chen replied. And the only way to stop being a monster is to admit what you did. To remember it. To make sure it never happens again. Thesic thought about his own people. The protests on Vreth worlds. The questions being asked. The certainty he had felt at the beginning of this war. And the doubt that had replaced it. I will do as you ask, he said finally. I will take my soldiers and go home. And I will share what you have given me. That's all I wanted. The Vreth Grand Fleet withdrew from the Kepler frontier. It took 3 days to retrieve all the soldiers who had been captured on the ground. The humans treated them well, better than the Concordat required. They were given food, medical care, and clean quarters until transport could be arranged. When the last Vreth ship was ready to leave, Admiral Thesic requested one final conversation with Admiral Chen. I have to ask, he said, what would you have done if your plan had failed? If the uprising had not worked? If my fleet had broken through your defenses? Chen considered the question. Then we would have fought. And died, probably. Many of us would have died. But you would not have taken prisoners. No. Even to save yourselves? Even to bargain for peace? Chen smiled. But it was not a happy expression. Admiral, there are things that hurt more than dying. Building cages is one of them. Watching beings suffer for years in those cages is another. We decided, as a species, that we would rather lose a war than become jailers again, even if it meant your extinction. Even then, Chen met his eyes. Some principles are worth more than survival. We believe that. Maybe someday you will too. Thesic returned to Vreth space. He did exactly what he had promised. He shared the archive of the HFY War with his people. He told them what he had seen in the Kepler frontier. He described the uprising, the patience, the way the humans had turned occupation into a trap. The reaction was not what he expected. Some called him a traitor. Some demanded he be court-martialed for his failure. But others listened. Others watched the recordings of HFY prisoners going mad in their cells. Others read the testimonies of human guards who had tried to help and failed. And slowly, very slowly, opinions began to change. 6 months after the war ended, Admiral Thesic was summoned to the Council of Admirals. He expected punishment. Instead, he was given a new assignment. The Concordat has requested Vreth representatives for a working group, Admiral Thesic's superior explained. They are reviewing the prisoner provisions of the civilized warfare laws. They want input from species who have experience with the current system. Thesic understood. They are considering changes, perhaps. Or perhaps they simply want to appear that they are considering changes. Either way, you will represent the Dominion. 3 months later, Thesic found himself on a neutral station, sitting across a table from Ambassador Cyril of the Kethari and Admiral Chen Wei-Lin of the Human Colonial Defense Fleet. Chen looked older than she had during the war. The weight of command had left marks on her face, but her eyes were the same, dark and deep and full of memory. The Concordat has drafted a new provision, Ambassador Cyril announced. It allows for immediate repatriation of captured combatants as an alternative to long-term detention. Any species may choose to release prisoners rather than hold them. Without penalty or stigma, Chen read the document in silence. Thesic watched her face, trying to read her reaction. It's not perfect, she said finally. It still allows for traditional imprisonment. Species who want to keep prisoners can still keep them. Change takes time, Cyril replied. This is a beginning. Chen looked at Thesic. What do you think, Admiral? Is this enough? Thesic considered. He thought about Veltrix, the mathematics teacher, about Shipmaster Kolvex standing confused on an alien moon, about the human prisoners who had waited patiently for a month, knowing that their rescue would come not through violence but through understanding. It is a start, he said, echoing words he had heard somewhere before. Chen smiled. For the first time, it looked genuine. That's exactly what I was going to say. The provision was adopted by the Concordat 6 months later. It was named the Chen-Thesic Amendment, after the 2 admirals who had championed it. History would remember them as allies, though they had once been enemies. Years later, a journalist asked Admiral Chen what she considered her greatest victory. She did not mention the Kepler frontier. She did not mention the war at all. Instead, she reached into her desk and pulled out a photograph. A Talari woman, sitting in a cell, staring at nothing. "My greatest victory," she said quietly, "will be the day no one remembers her name, because that will mean we've finally stopped building cages." The journalist did not understand. But Admiral Thesick, watching the interview from his home on Vreath Prime, understood perfectly. Some victories were measured in battles won. Others were measured in prisons never built. Humanity had chosen the second kind. And slowly, very slowly, the galaxy was learning to choose it too.